Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm Erin, and for today's video we are going to be talking about the disappearance of Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone. So first of all, I want to say long time no see. I know I always say I'm busy and whatnot, but I am busy and whatnot, and I just haven't had time to film. So I wouldn't say plan on regular videos for me, but when I can sit down and film, I will. So I had initially wanted to film this video either the weekend that was the anniversary of their disappearance or the following weekend. The weekend of their anniversary of their disappearance, I ended up being busy, and then right before the following weekend, the weekend of February 26th, that Wednesday, I ended up being admitted to the hospital for a couple days, and when I got home from that on Friday, I was just completely wiped out the whole weekend, so I haven't had a chance since to film. But anyway, let's jump into this. 17 years ago, on February 19th, 2005, Danielle Imbo and Richard Petrone walked out of Abilene on South Street in Philadelphia and disappeared without a trace. So this particular case piqued my interest because I actually used to live near the area where this all occurred. I lived there about 4 or 5 years after this had happened. I actually used to see billboards with their faces on it when I was going to and from work, because I used to commute from Upper Darby, Pennsylvania to Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I also at one point was commuting from Upper Darby to King of Prussia, so it's all right in that area. I actually would have driven some of the roads that they could have potentially taken that night, and you'll understand what I mean as I get further into what had happened. And there are a few different theories on what could have happened to Danielle and Richard. So Danielle Imbo was 34 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was born on August 7th, 1970. Danielle was a mother, and her son was about 18 months old when she disappeared. Danielle processed mortgage loans for a living, and she was also a singer for multiple bands in the South Jersey, Philadelphia area. Danielle is described as being 5'5" with brown hair and hazel eyes and around 117 pounds at the time of her disappearance. She also happens to have a tattoo on her lower back. She was last seen wearing a light-colored jacket, a cream sweater, and blue jeans. And she was also known to wear 3 rings on either her left or right middle finger. Richard Petrone was 35 years old at the time of his disappearance. He was born on August 29th, 1969. He too was a parent and had a teenage daughter at the time of his disappearance. Richard worked at his family's bakery, Vikings Pastries, in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. He is described as being 5'9" with brown hair and blue eyes and around 200 pounds at the time of his disappearance. He has a tattoo of the word Angela on his left arm, and he also has a tattoo of clowns on his right arm. Richard was last seen wearing a gray polo shirt and blue jeans. Danielle and Richard had known each other for a very long time. They had actually been friends since high school. Danielle was actually really good friends with Richard's sister Christine, and that's how they met each other. Their two families actually became rather close. Danielle's mother and Christine and Richard's mother became close friends since their children were friends. So around this time, Richard and Danielle had been dating casually, but she decided to break it off. This was because during that time, Danielle was actually facing a contentious divorce, and she decided that she wanted to focus on her work and her son. When she decided to break it off with Richard, there really wasn't any ill will. He understood where she was coming from because he too was a single parent. The two actually remained friends and remained in contact with one another. On February 19th, 2005, Richard had texted Danielle to see if she wanted to meet up for some drinks, and she accepted that invitation. It had been about a month since the two had seen each other. That evening on February 19th, Danielle actually went to dinner with Christine, who was Rich's sister, as well as Rich and Christine's mother and Danielle's mother. While they were dining together, she told them that she had planned on meeting up with Rich afterwards for some drinks. After that dinner, Christine actually dropped off Danielle at the tap room, which was a bar near where Richard's apartment was. Richard and Danielle met up at the tap room, and eventually they decided to meet up with another couple at a place called Abilene's so that they could have some more drinks and enjoy some live music. Before leaving the tap room and going to Abilene's to meet up with this other couple, Richard and Danielle called Christine to see if she wanted to join them at Abilene's, but she declined because she was tired. So they went from the tap room to Abilene's, where they met up with this other couple who said that throughout the night, Richard and Danielle seemed to be having a great time. They said that Richard and Danielle seemed to be enjoying each other's company, and they were actually very affectionate with one another. So between 11:30 and 11:45 on February 19th, the group decided that they were going to leave Abilene's. As they were leaving, Richard happened to mention to the other couple that they had met up with that they got lucky and they had found a parking spot fairly close to the venue. Now, the couple they were with were under the impression when they had parted ways that Richard was actually going to drive Danielle home to her home in Mount Laurel, New Jersey. Once Richard and Danielle left Abilene's, they were never seen or heard from again. So the next morning, Danielle's brother shows up at her apartment because he was going to fix some curtain rods for her that her son had pulled down. When he arrived at the apartment and knocked on the door, there was no response, so he tried calling Danielle's cell phone, which went straight to voicemail. After getting no response from the door and the phone going straight to voicemail, he decided to call their mom, who informed him that Danielle had gone out with Rich the night before and that perhaps she stayed at his house. Her brother actually had a key to the apartment, so he let himself in, he fixed the curtain rods, and went about his way. Now, when he was in the apartment, he said that everything looked like it was in place, nothing was messed up, it just seemed like maybe Danielle had never came home that night. Now, Danielle had also scheduled a hair appointment with Christine on Sunday, the next day, and she never showed up for that appointment. This was not like Danielle at all to not show up for an appointment, and Christine became concerned and she too called her cell phone, which of course went straight to voicemail. So she thought maybe Danielle and Richard were still together, and since Danielle didn't answer, she decided to call Rich, whose phone also went straight to voicemail. Obviously, she was still concerned when neither one of them had answered the phone, so Christine called her mother to see if she had heard from Richard at all. Christine's mother informed her that she had no idea where the two could be and that she had not heard from them. Obviously, this made Christine and Rich's mother concerned as well, so she too tried to get a hold of Richard and had no luck doing so. That Sunday was going to be the Daytona 500, and Rich's mom knew that he was supposed to have some friends over to watch the race. So she figured that he would be at his apartment since he was going to be expecting friends to come over. She had a sister who lived close by to where Richard's apartment was, so she sent her to go check and see if Richard was at the apartment. When Richard's aunt arrives to the apartment, she knocks on the door and receives no response. She does, however, hear his dog barking in the apartment, and she lets Rich's mother know that the dog is there, but it appears like nobody is home. So obviously this concerns Richard's mom more, so she gets in contact with one of the friends that they had met up with the night before, the couple that met them at Abilene's. And after getting some information from him about when he last saw Richard and Danielle, she decided to get into contact with Danielle's mom next. Once Richard's mom had contacted Danielle's mom, and neither one of them had heard from their children, this is when it became quite obvious that something was extremely wrong. That Sunday evening, Danielle's ex-husband was supposed to drop their son back off. However, Danielle was still not home, which was extremely unlike her. The two families decided to search for Danielle and Richard before reporting them missing. So what they did was they went to the areas where Danielle and Richard would have been the night before, as well as called jails, hospitals, etc. to see if anybody had seen or heard from either one of them. Unfortunately, they got no results from this, and there was no trace of Richard or Danielle anywhere. In fact, there hasn't been a trace of them since. There's been no bank activity, credit card activity, phone activity, anything from either of them since February 19th of 2005. So what could have happened to Danielle and Richard? First, we're going to talk about Danielle's ex-husband, Joe. Obviously, Danielle and her ex had a strained relationship. They were going through a contentious divorce at the time. Joe, the ex-husband, actually never liked Richard and had threatened him to stay away from Danielle several times. So obviously, because of the contention between Joe and Danielle, as well as Joe's dislike of Richard, Joe ended up being questioned many times by police. He was also questioned by the FBI, and nothing ever came from any of those interviews. Joe actually has a solid alibi for the night that Richard and Danielle disappeared. He was actually at a friend's child's birthday party that was pretty far away from the area where Richard and Danielle had disappeared from. Now, Joe has also taken a lie detector test. However, the results were inconclusive. Now, that being said, obviously lie detector tests, they can't be used in court or anything, so draw from that what you will. Joe is never actually formally named a suspect, but he also has not been completely ruled out from anything either. So another theory as to what happened to Danielle and Richard is maybe they ended up in some type of body of water. I'll pop a map up here so you can see there's a couple rivers that are in the area. There's the Schuylkill River as well as the Delaware River. Now, if Richard had been driving Danielle back to New Jersey, you do have to cross over the Delaware River in order to get into New Jersey from Philadelphia. They also could have gone a different route, which may have taken them over the Schuylkill River. Like I said, I'm going to pop in a map here so you can see what I'm talking about. So did the vehicle they were in end up in one of these bodies of water? So another key thing in this case is that Richard's 2001 Dodge Dakota, which was black over silver in color, also has completely disappeared without a trace. That's what leads many to think that maybe they had ended up in an accident of some sort in the vehicle and ended up maybe in a body of water. Like I said, one theory is that maybe on the way back to Danielle's place, they somehow ended up in the Delaware River. Now, given the route that Richard and Danielle would have likely taken to get back to her place in New Jersey from Abilene's, it's unlikely that they would have ended up in the river somehow. That's because the roads that they would take are major roadways, and somebody would have likely seen them end up in the river had they gone off the road and into the river. However, maybe they ended up taking a different route. Who knows? So the waterways in the area have been searched, and I'm not quite sure how extensively, but what has been searched has turned up no evidence of Richard, Danielle, or the truck. Now, that being said, they did find a Dodge Dakota truck in the river, but it was not Richard's truck. The other thing is if Richard and Danielle had made it going back to New Jersey, they would have had to pay a toll going over one of the bridges. There's no getting around that. The truck was never seen on any closed circuit TV from any of the toll booths, and also if you're from that area, you know that you can pay with tolls with what's called Easy Pass. It's essentially a tag that goes up in the window and you can drive through without having to stop. So that would have triggered either Danielle or Richard's Easy Pass if they had gone across the river, and both of their Easy Passes remain inactive. So it doesn't seem that Richard and Danielle ended up going back to New Jersey. So obviously, like all cities, Philadelphia has its good parts and its bad parts. South Philadelphia is kind of sketchy in some parts. It's actually known for crime as well as car chop shops. So it is possible when Richard and Danielle left Abilene's that maybe they were carjacked as they were trying to get into the vehicle. Carjackings at that time were pretty frequent in the area. That being said, it is unlikely that someone who is doing a carjacking would also have the wherewithal to murder two people and leave absolutely no evidence behind. Like I said, there's several ways they could have gone back to New Jersey to get to Mount Laurel from where they were in South Philadelphia. One thing that came to my mind was maybe they ended up in Camden, New Jersey, which is not a nice town at all. So maybe they ended up in Camden somehow and something happened. However, like I said, it's very unlikely because the truck was never seen on any closed circuit TV or at the toll booths that night. Another theory is that somehow their disappearance is tied into organized crime. There has been some speculation that Richard was somehow connected to the Pagan Motorcycle Club. Now, the Pagans are known for moving illicit substances, so drugs. Somehow Richard's name came up in an FBI investigation that was linking the Pagans to a doctor in the area who was running a quote-unquote pill mill. And this pill mill was somehow connected to the Pagan Motorcycle Club. Now, in my research, I didn't really understand how Richard had somehow been connected to this FBI investigation, so I'm not really too sure on the details on that. I just know that it was brought up. So a member of the Pagan Motorcycle Club that was actually linked to this FBI investigation with the pill mill was questioned extensively about the disappearance of Richard and Danielle, and he denied that they had anything to do with it. There was also some speculation that Richard had some kind of gambling problem and that maybe he had some unpaid debts. However, none of these claims have been substantiated because there didn't appear to be any financial issues with Richard or Danielle. So another theory is that they just ran away together. Obviously, people do this where they'll just disappear and they've decided to leave their life and start a new one, essentially, without telling anybody. So there is always the possibility that these two decided to run away together and just leave their old lives behind. However, this is pretty unlikely because the both of them had children. And they were both obviously very close to their children, so it would be unlikely that they would just up and leave them behind without saying anything. And like I said, there has been no trace of them since. Nobody has claimed to have seen them, etc. So again, it's unlikely that they just decided to up and run away. The last theory I'm going to touch on is maybe this was a murder for hire. The FBI feels that whatever happened to Danielle and Richard had to have been done by a professional. There's literally no evidence of anything that happened after they walked out of the door at Abilene's. This is what leads authorities to believe that this could be some type of murder for hire. There's literally no trace of them, no evidence. Nothing was left behind, they can't find the truck, etc. So somebody who does this type of crime for a living obviously is going to be able to pull something off like this without leaving a trace of anything behind. But the question is, why? Why would somebody want to kill Richard and Danielle? Why would there be a murder for hire? There is always the possibility that maybe it was mistaken identity and somebody who was hired to put a hit out on somebody else did the job on the wrong people. There's always that possibility as well, I guess. Also, for the question as to why, I guess maybe they could go back and say maybe Danielle's ex-husband had hired somebody. It could be related to the motorcycle club or some type of other organized crime. Now, both families obviously have seemed to come to terms with the fact that it is very unlikely that Richard and Danielle are still alive. Unfortunately, the families that were once close are no longer close with each other. The families are actually at odds with one another when it comes to this case. It seems that each family blames the other's child for what could have happened to them. As I said, this is an odd case because there's just really no evidence as to what could have happened to the two of them. So there really has not been any new news since their disappearance as to what could have happened, any evidence that's popped up. But each year around the anniversary of their disappearance, there usually is a couple news stories run just to see if maybe somebody from the general public can come up with what happened, whether they had seen Danielle and Richard that night, anything really. If you happen to have any information on the disappearance of Danielle Imbo or Richard Petrone, here is the information to get in contact with the FBI to give them any information you may have. So what do you think could have happened to Danielle and Richard? For me, there are two theories that I think are the strongest as to what could have happened to them. I don't think they ran away from their lives. I don't think they would have left their children or their families like that. They seem to be very close with their families, as well as they both love their children. I'm not so sure about the whole organized crime thing because I didn't quite get where the link was with that. And it didn't appear that that would be the case. However, The top thing that I think happened was that there was some type of murder for hire. Why or who would hire somebody to do this, I have no idea. However, like authorities have said, with the lack of evidence as to what could have happened to the two of them, that's top at my list. This may have been somebody who knew what they were doing, knew what they had to get rid of in order for them to just disappear. Now, with that being said, I do think that another theory, the water theory, that they somehow ended up in the Delaware, had they gone their normal route, I don't think it's likely that they would have ended up in the river. However, maybe there was something going on with traffic, an accident, whatever. Having lived in that area, I know that you can try to go one way and something comes up and you have to kind of detour around it. So maybe they ended up down by the river in some other part of Philly. And somehow the truck ended up in there. I do think it's weird that when the waterways were searched, that they did find a different Dodge Dakota pickup truck. It was not Richard's. I guess they looked at the VIN number to come to that conclusion. But the Delaware River is a big river, so that's the other thing that would make sense to me, to have them just completely disappear. There was some kind of accident, the truck went off the road, and unfortunately, you know, they passed away in the accident, especially if it ended up in the river. So those are the things that I think could have happened. Like I said, either the murder for hire or the disappearing into the river because of an accident. That's the only two things that I can think of that would leave absolutely no evidence behind. I don't think they were carjacked. I don't think a carjacker would have the smarts usually to just make everything disappear without a trace. I do hope for both of their families, however, that something clicks and comes forward or comes to light just to let them get closure as to what could have possibly happened to the two of them. But that's it for this video, guys. If you liked it, please give me a big old thumbs up. If you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit the subscribe button down below, and I will catch you guys in my next video. Bye!